So today we're looking at Job 31. And this is Job's last hurrah. He's going to finally give up the talking. And, now that I even say that, I say, sometimes it's good to know when to stop talking. Yeah, you ever notice that sometimes? You just let it go. You know what I mean, Wayne?
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, you just let it go. I feel like I quit. We're in 31, yes. Yep. So Job is going to finish up today. He's going to say what he has to say, but he's going to lay it all out on the line today. Once again, remember on the last two chapters we've been talking about Job, how he's been focusing on himself. He's been using the words I and mine and me and kind of just going through this whole pity party that he's going through, and he's leaning on things that he thinks he understands. We're going to see even more so even in this chapter. But I will say to you, when you are in trouble and you are having difficulty, what do you lean on? What should we lean on? We should be leaning on the Lord, exactly. And when we find ourselves leaning on something other than the Lord, it speaks to us to what we consider to be valuable. Some people lean on their money. Some people are going to lean on their strength and their health or their wisdom and their knowledge. Other people are going to be leaning on a lot of things that they consider to be helpful. But the thing that we need to recognize that we can lean on that will always be there and always bring support. It may not bring the support in the way we would like to see it or think we should see it, but it will bring the support that is needed. And that's when we lean on the Lord. And so leaning on the Lord cannot be overstated. That's just something that we just need to learn to do. And I think over time, after we've learned how to lean on everything else, and we then begin to truly lean on the Lord, because everything else has done what? Failed us, let us down. We begin to just lean on the Lord. And so we're going to see that again with Job. So let's go ahead and get the reading in. Job 31. And let's see what he's got to say.
Chapter 31. I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above? And what inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Is not destruction to the wicked, and a strange punishment to the workers of iniquity? Doth not he see my ways, and count all my steps? If I have walked with vanity, or if my foot hath hasted to deceit, let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know mine integrity. If my step hath turned out of the way, and mine heart walked after mine eyes, and if any blot hath cleaved to mine hands, then let me sow, and let another eat. Yea, let my offspring be rooted out. If mine heart hath been deceived by a woman, or if I have laid wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind unto another, and let others bow down upon her. For this is an heinous crime, yea, it is an iniquity to be punished by the judges. For it is a fire that consumeth to destruction, and would root out all mine increase. If I did despise the cause of my manservant, or of my maidservant, when they contended with me, what then shall I do when God riseth up? And when he visiteth, what shall I answer him? Did not he that made me in the womb make him? And did not one fashion us in the womb? If I have withheld the poor from their desire, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or have eaten my morsel myself alone, and the fatherless hath not eaten thereof. For from my youth he was brought up with me, as with a father, and I have guided her from my mother's womb. If I have seen any perish for want of clothing, or any poor without covering, if his loins have not blessed me, and if he were not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have lifted up my hand against the fatherless, when I saw my help in the gate, then let mine arm fall from my shoulder blade, and mine arm be broken from the bow. For destruction from God was a terror to me, and by reason of his highness I could not endure. If I have made gold my hope, or have said to the fine gold, thou art my confidence, if I rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because mine hand had gotten much, if I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, and my heart hath been secretly enticed, or my mouth hath kissed my hand, this also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge. For I should have denied the God that is above. If I rejoiced at the destruction of him that hated me, or lifted up myself when evil found him, neither have I suffered my mouth to sin by wishing a curse to his soul. If the men of my tabernacle said not, oh, that we had of his flesh, we cannot be satisfied. The stranger did not lodge in the street, but I opened my doors to the traveler. If I covered my transgressions as Adam, by hiding mine iniquity in my bosom, did I fear a great multitude, or did the contempt of families terrify me, that I kept silence, and went not out of the door? Oh, that one would hear me. Behold, my desire is that the Almighty would answer me, and that mine adversary had written a book. Surely I would take it upon my shoulder, and bind it as a crown to me. I would declare unto him the number of my steps. As a prince would I go near unto him. If my land cry against me, or that the furrows likewise thereof complain, if I have eaten the fruits thereof without money, or have caused the owners thereof to lose their life, let thistles grow instead of wheat, and cockle instead of barley. The words of Job are ended.
All right, so Job is done. We're in Job chapter 31, for those who just joined us. And so what we see here is Job is finishing up. Now, he's done. And like I said, Job now is going to kind of let it all hang out here. You ever have somebody do you wrong, and then they come to you, and you know they've done you wrong? Let me just pause it.
How do you do that to somebody? And then they start charging you money?
Okay, there we go. And so you know that they have done you wrong, and they know you have done them wrong. And so they come to you and they say a phrase like this: if I have done something wrong to you, I'm sorry.
Wow.
So now, right off the bat, right there, what kind of an apology is that? It's not an apology, because they're not saying I did something wrong and I'm sorry. They're skating around that if I've done something. So they're not trying to admit it. They're trying to just say, well, if you feel that way, then fine. Well, I don't know if you noticed it or if you picked up on that, but did you see how many times Job said, if I, in this chapter? So he's coming to God now, and he's basically saying, you know, if I've done anything wrong, then let this bad stuff happen to me. Okay, wait a minute. Time out, Job. Bad stuff is happening to you. So nobody that has ever been sinless will ever suffer wrong except for God himself come in the form of who? Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Everything else that is perfect is void and separate from suffering. Only God can be perfect and complete and yet still endure suffering. And he did it because of love. So if there's suffering, there is what? Sin. The wages of sin is death. Death comes in so many different facets and so many different forms, but it is a decaying. It is a removal and a separation and an emptying. Death has a lot of different layers to it, but those are the wages of sin. We often talked about how the fact that we even live, we can't live on this earth without living on things that have died. Either the dying plants and vegetables that once lived and we have to kill it and eat it, or the animals, the chicken, the lamb, the turkey, the beef, the pig, whatever it is that you like. It's got to die so you may live. You know, and I was watching a show the other day, and I said, "Oh, I got to use that story." And there was a story about the dog. The dog was hungry. The dog hadn't eaten for a couple of days, and he's just going around looking. And finally, he saw himself a cat. And man, that dog hadn't eaten in so long. He went running after that cat and running and running. And he's chasing it up and down the field, through the rocks, up and down the trees and everything. And finally, the dog gives up and stops running after. And so a farmer looks at the dog and says, "Wait a minute, you haven't eaten for several days, and you stopped running. I mean, why you let that cat outrun you?" And that dog looked at the farmer and said, "Well, I was running for food. That cat was running for his life." Two different kinds of running. And so that's how we have to keep in mind. There's a lot of things that we're doing, but why are we doing it? You know, are we doing it because, well, it's just something to do, or we're doing it because we're trying to maintain our eternal life? And you have to put proper perspectives on it, and so forth and so on. All right. Now that I got my bad joke in, I had to make sure I squeeze that in there. Let's look at Job here. All right. He's having an issue because he thinks that he may not have done things that would earn him the punishment that he's gotten. Now, right off the bat, we can just say that the wages of sin is death. So therefore, if you sin, if you are a sinner, and we are what? We are born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So that means we have all of that guilt in us automatically at birth. Therefore, suffering is part of your reality. It's part of my reality because we are in sin. All right. I would draw the analogy to say that if you're born in water, you're going to be what? Wet.
Wet.
Exactly. And so if you're born in this world, you're born in sin, and you're going to be living and dealing with sin. Now, the key is how to acknowledge the fact that you are a sinner. That's the first thing. And then secondly, recognize that God has made a way for you not to live in sin for in eternity. All right. So Job is trying to, through all of this conversation, especially in this last chapter, to justify his means. And you cannot justify your means by good works. Let's start this off. Let's go ahead. So Job says in his first verse, he says, "I made a covenant with my eyes when I should think upon a maid, for the portion of God is there from above, and what inheritance of the Almighty from on high." All right, so what is he saying? He's saying, I recognize that God is on high, and I recognize that God is the one that sets the rules and the regulations. One of the rules and regulations that Job is acknowledging by that first verse is that if I made a covenant with my eyes that I would not look upon a what? A woman or a maid in the what? In the wrong way. Now, what does that bring to your memory? What does that make you think about? Instantly, I go back to what Jesus said. Jesus said that Moses' law said that thou shalt not commit what? Adultery. But I say unto you that if you even look upon a woman and think within your what? Your heart, you have already committed adultery with her. So Jesus is letting you know that no matter whether you did it or not, the fact that you're born in it means you have the potentiality to do it. And then you got to fight it off. See, there's certain things that you got to learn to resist and to fight off. That's how you know you have that you are a sinner. See, there's certain things that you don't have to resist. Like, I don't have to worry about eating, chain link fence. You say, well, Wayne, that's ridiculous. Who ever thinks about eating a chain link fence? Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't have to go out and teach yourself and try to get yourself away from eating, because you're never ever thinking about doing something as ridiculous and as nonsensical as that. But sin will draw you to the things that you would want to do But then you have to learn to what? Resist it. So you're resisting things that you would be drawn to. That's why you got to resist it. See, there's no AA for eating chain link fences. It's not that I heard of, but there's AA for a lot of other stuff. There's people that work on things to try to help them from telling lies. There's people that that come together in groups to keep them from doing drugs and pornography and all that other kind of stuff. Why? Because we are what? Drawn to it. All right? And that's something that we are drawn to because we are a sinner. Now, look at what Job says. I made a covenant. Okay. When you have to make a covenant, that means that you already admitting what?
That you have a problem.
I got the issue. So even by him saying I made a covenant with my eyes, guess what he's doing? He's showing his guilt. And he's trying to use that as a means to say, I've taken care of that. I'm not guilty of looking upon a woman and lusting and all that kind of stuff. When Jesus says the moment you do that, you're already guilty. And the fact that Job had to make a covenant means that he has recognized that we're in himself and had to go ahead and make the covenant. But now he's trying to use it as a means of lifting himself up, self-righteous. And you're going to see that throughout this entire chapter. Okay, that's exactly what you're going to see. Verse 3. It is not destruction to the wicked and a stranger punishment to the worker of iniquity. All right, now he's talking more about what God will do. God will always punish and bring destruction to the wicked. And he will bring punishment to the workers of what? Iniquity. Well, we talked about that. It uses the word wicked, but we can substitute the word wicked for sin. We are born into sin or wickedness and shaped in iniquity. All right, so he's just ratifying that. Verse 4, does not he seeth my ways and counteth all my steps? So he's just once again saying, he can say that God can see he is guiltless because I've already trained my eyes not to do this, and God saw that I did it. What Job is not getting is the fact that you had to do that, meaning that you already had it what? In you. Okay? So that's the thing. All right, so when you, you smell like good food and you walk in the kitchen and the person cooking don't you go into that pot until dinner's ready. Why? Because they know the moment you walked in there, even though you never touched the pot, but the fact that you kind of looked at it, they can tell in you already was the notion to go look and to lift the lid to see what was in the pot. Though you didn't do it, it was in you to do it until somebody told you, don't do that. Don't get out my kitchen. All right? So the point I'm trying to make in Job's effort to justify himself, he's actually showcasing his guilt. And it's something that we sometimes can do. Then Job begins his if I march. Verse 5. If I have walked with vanity, or if my foot have hastened to deceit. Okay. Definitely, we're going to see this when we get to the study of the Songs of Solomon. We're going to see this whole thing about vanity. And also, I can make a connection between Job and Solomon in this sense. Job is saying, when I looked upon a woman, I made a covenant with myself that I won't even want her. I'll just turn away from them. What did Solomon do? When Solomon saw another woman, what did he do? He said, you're going to be my wife. And if you're not going to be my wife, you're going to be my concubine. When he saw a woman that he liked, guess what happened? They came home with him. He had how many women? How many wives? 300 women, 300 wives, and 700
porcupines.
What?
That's something like that.
I said, that's all right, brother. You keep on.
Concubine.
Concubines, yeah. But he had 1,000 women. And the point I'm making is that Solomon didn't make no agreement. And let me show you the contrast between Solomon and Job. Job, in his book, is showing how an individual whom God has blessed, but allowed to go through major suffering, and how he acts and reacts in the relationship with God, compared to Solomon, who's going to do all kinds of craziness, but everything he touches is going to work. All the stuff that Solomon does, everything he touches is going to go exactly the way he wanted it to go. He's not going to have any major disappointments at all. Nothing to compare like with Job. So, when they write their books, you know what you're going to see in Solomon's book? This same word that Job just talked about. Solomon is going to say, all is vanity. Because you know why? Because Solomon says he put his heart to give himself every pleasure that he could think to give himself, and he was successful at doing it. And when it was all said and done, Solomon still did not feel fulfilled and satisfied. This world can't scratch the itch that you have. It can't solve what it is you're trying to gain or understand. It's only through God. So a man like Job, who suffers and still can't understand how life can be the way it is, and a man like Solomon, who never suffers, get everything he is, and is still just as dissatisfied and bitter with life as Job is. Why? Because if Job can't look past the suffering, he's going to be miserable. If Solomon can't look past all that he can achieve and gain, he's going to be miserable. And when you put them both together, what's the difference between the two? They're both what? Miserable. So it's an important thing to keep in mind that no matter which way you go, no matter whether you're going from a standpoint that God will test you through suffering, or whether God will allow you to achieve all that you can achieve, either way, if you don't have him as the center, you're going to be what? Miserable. So we'll happen to be looking at Job here. He's suffering, but he's miserable. And when we get to Solomon, we're going to see all the wonders that he does, but he's trying to see if he can make those wonders give him the joy that only the Lord can give you. So he's miserable. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind. So when I read verse 5 of Job 31, and I see him use this phrase, if I have walked with vanity. Well, we jumped over to Solomon, and we see Solomon already said, everything in life is vain. It's all vanity if you're living for that. That's the conclusion that a man that had everything came to. And Job was a man that had much suffering, and he came to the what? Same conclusion. He's disappointed. What's the answer for both guys? That your satisfaction and your joy has to be where? In the Lord.
In God.
And if you're trying to find it in any other thing, you're going to have disappointment. It's going to definitely happen. Let's keep going. Verse 6. Let me be weighed, even in balance, that God may know my iniquity. Wow. Yeah, Job, that's not the way you want to go. See, like I said, Job's at the end of his ropes here now. He's ready just to say whatever it is on his mind. He's not holding back. He says, weigh me then. Put me on the balance. How compare my good to my bad? He's got a little attitude now. Look at all the good that I've done, and look at all the bad that I've done, and weigh it, and see which one weighs the most. It don't matter, Job. It don't matter. How much arsenic do you need to put in water before it's poison? Not that much. See, sin, it doesn't matter. If you have sin, even if it's just a little sin, you have what? You have sin. And that's the part that sometimes we as human beings don't get, because we start looking at measures and amounts and sizes and types and not understand that it's sin itself that God hates. He loves us. He cannot tolerate sin. And it's not he can't tolerate a little sin, or he can't tolerate a lot of sin. He can't tolerate sin. You see? And that's the part, if you're dead, are you a little dead, or are you, if you're dead, you're what? You're dead, right? If you die in your sleep, or you get died by you run over by a train, well, one is, I don't know if one is better than the other, but no matter how you want to analyze it, the way that you died, you're still what? You're still dead. And so Job is having that struggle with sin right now. And he's started to compare. And so he's telling God to weigh him. In other words, give me what I deserve. And I'm going to say right there, time out. Me, I do not want what I deserve. You know what I want? I want grace and mercy. I want the righteousness of God, the righteousness of Christ to do what? To cover me. Because as much as I try to do, I'm not leaning on what I try to do to earn a way into God's grace. That's not going to work. What I need is God's goodness, his grace, his mercy. Job is frustrated. And sometimes when we get frustrated, y'all know we can say the wrong thing. We can go down the wrong road. Right? And that's what's happening here with Job. All right, so, and then he goes in verse 7, and he's back to that if statement. If my steps have turned out of the way, and my heart walked after mine eyes, and if by any blot covereth a cleave to my hand. So he's saying, if I walked out of the way, if I got any blotch or any stain in my hand. Now, right off the bat, he should not allow that to happen or to be stated, because he knows he's not perfect. He knows that he has an issue. All right, I see, David, you got your hand up? All right. I thought you had something to say. I saw your hand go up there. All right. And so it's an important thing to keep in mind. No, we don't have any means in which we can tell God, well, if my hands are, look at my hands, they're not dirty. You're born in sin. And that's the piece that I can't really bring out enough. But let's keep going. Job's not done with this. Verse 8. It says, then let me sow, and let another eat. Yea, let my offspring be rooted out. So, what this just did here was, he pronounced a curse on himself. If I've done anything wrong, and if there's any blot on my hand, let everything that I sow, somebody else eat. Now, Job, why would you say that? Frustration. See, and you know when you get frustrated? When you don't trust God. If you don't believe God's going to bring you through, and you got to do it on your own, you're going to get mad. Because it's hard. It's difficult. You know why? Let me rephrase that. It's not hard. It's not difficult. It's impossible. You can't bring yourself out. So you're going to always be frustrated. You're going to always be angry. Because no matter what you do, you're going to find yourself coming up what? Short. You ain't going to get to righteousness. You're not going to get to perfection. I don't care how hard or how much or what you do. You're going to always come up feeling like, I can't get there. You're going to need God to bring you there. So, therefore, in the difficult times when you don't understand it, when you don't get it, like what Job is having here, we need to have a spiritual element that we embrace and use. And that's called what? Faith.
Faith.
I don't get it. I don't understand it. It don't make no sense to me. But I know God knows what's going on. So then I got to lean on him. That's when I can't lean on nobody else. I can't lean on what I know because I don't understand it. I can't lean on my money because if I did, I would buy my way out, but I can't. So I'm going to have to lean on God because I'm going to have to lean on somebody who I know knows the answer, even though he won't share it with me right now. And the fact that he won't share the answer with me right now means that he knows I'm not ready for it. And so I got to have what? Faith in that. All right? Remember when Jesus came back, when he rose from the dead, and the disciples saw him and said, will you now restore Israel? And he told it's not time for you to know. You're not ready to receive. So there's things that we're just not ready to receive or to understand, and we got to just have faith on God. Though we are sometimes desiring and wanting certain things to happen. All right? There's a lot we could say on that, but let's move along. Verse 9. If my heart have been deceived by a woman, all right, or if I have laid wait at my neighbor's door. All right, so he's back now at what he was talking about in the first verse. All right, so he's going back. If he said, if my heart has been deceived by a woman, all right, or if he's waiting at his neighbor's door, going there looking at the neighbor's wife. Mm-hmm. So he's already, see, why do you say these things? Why? Because you are a what? Sinner. That's why they enter your mind. You know, and you can say, well, I want all bad thoughts and all weird ideas and all crazy thinking to just be wiped out of my brain. I don't ever want to think of anything or have any of that stuff pop into my mind or any of the other stuff that happened in the past to come back to. It ain't going to happen. You know why it's not going to happen? Because you're living in sin. You're in a sinful environment. Now, you can be redeemed from sin and from the consequences of sin. And that happens when you trust Jesus. But you still are in the world. And if you're in the world, you're going to be bumping against, dealing with, and have come out of you from time to time sinful activity. Be it thought, action, deed, or speech. It will be there until God cleanses you thoroughly, which he has promised to do. All right. And so he's like, you know, if I've done this, and so if I've waited at the door of my neighbor, waiting for his wife, look at verse 10. Then let my wife grind unto another. So now he's producing a what? Another curse on himself. If I thought like that, let my wife go out and cheat with somebody else. See, you're making these vows. If I've done this, may God do this. Which we shouldn't do. Because God, well, if he's going to hold you accountable, he's going to hold you accountable not just by what you've done, he's also going to hold you accountable by what's in your heart. And that's what people forget. See, it's the heart that has to be fixed. And if the heart is not changed, that's why Jesus says you have to be born again. You can't bring your old self into this new situation. You don't take new wine and put it where? In an old body. So that new spirit of you is got to be put into a new you. And then eventually the body part of us, which is not redeemed, this body will go back to the dust. But God will give us a what? A new eternal body. And that's one that we are looking forward to receiving. Let's move on. Verse 11. For this is a horrendous crime. Yea, it is an iniquity to be punished by the judges. So he's talking about the fact that he feels like he's being punished. He's talking about the difficulty of it. But I like the word that he chooses here. He uses iniquity. And that's something that we got to keep in mind. We do from time to time operate in iniquity, even though we don't think we do. Because we operate in a means that is sometimes very selfish. It's a means that's always self-serving. I'm not always trying to look out for everybody else, but I'm trying to look out for everybody else as well as how it's also going to help me. And you say, well, I never do that. Well, we all do it to a certain degree. And we've learned, you can learn over years to try to be more and more selfless and more giving. But we all have a ingrained self-preserving mindset that we have to admit to. And if we don't recognize that about ourselves, then the enemy can take it and utilize it in us. All right? I often think about Judas. I mean, his whole thing was that he was trying to make Jesus do what he wanted Jesus to do because he saw how it could benefit what? Him. And remember the disciples, all of them were like that to a certain degree because they all argued who was going to be Jesus's, right-hand man when he comes into his kingdom. Who's going to be his number one disciple when he comes, and they argued about that about themselves. All right? And so we all have that in us. And what the book of Job does, and that's why I told you that this book is significant, it digs down into not just surface stuff and not just the casual conversation, but it's going to help you pull out that real you, because it's going to talk about the things of the heart. And that's what Job is talking about here. This is why this is in the Bible, and that's why God picked Job to allow Satan to be leashed on him, so that Job can come out and show all of this imperfection. Job is showing his sinful side. So we can look at him and go, wow, you know what? I've seen that in myself too. I've seen that in myself. See, that's the beauty of this book, if you allow it. Yes. Go ahead, sir.
No, I said it should be called the Book of Wayne.
Oh. Yeah, it certainly can be. And because me and you got the same name, I can say that's true. You can call it Wayne for you, and I can call it Wayne for me. That's for sure.
It's almost that it looks like the Lord allowed a righteous man to be dissected, so that we can see the inward part of a righteous man, and let it be known that even a righteous man still needs God.
Yes, he does. No matter how righteous you think you are, or how righteous other people. And see, the thing about it is, the people in the neighborhood, they knew Job was a good man until this happened. Then they began to go, ooh, the three friends part, the part we already went through. They were like, Job, you must have done something, brother. This don't happen to just ordinary good folk. All right, but we've already talked about that. So let's move along. Where was I at? 14? 13. Okay, he's back to the if I, all right? That whole if I. If I did despise the cause of my maidservant or my manservant or my maidservant, why they contended with me. So he's saying, people that work for me, I pay them a fair wage. I didn't do so. Once again, he's breaking his arm to do what? Pat himself on the back. When I had people come in and do work for me, I paid them the right. I gave them the right deal. I didn't treat people bad. Anyone that was working in my house, I gave them the proper thing. So he's basically saying I treated folks correctly. All right, and that's something that you can always say from your what? Your point of view. Because sometimes you ever do something for somebody and you just thought you did the right thing, and then they turn around when people come back to you and tell you, yeah, you thought you did it right, but you should have done this. And then you go, wow, you know what? You're right. And so from your perspective and from your point of view, sometimes you can only see what you see as being, I did what I thought was right. Until somebody points out to you, yeah, but you also could have done this. And then it opens up in your mind and you go, wow, I sure could have done that. And so Job is saying, yeah, I didn't do nothing wrong, but let's talk to the manservant. Let's talk to the maidservant and see what they got to say. They might say, it was a couple times you didn't pay me for the holiday. It was a couple times I didn't get no overtime check. You don't know what they may be saying. But let's keep going here. Verse 14. What then shall I do when God raises up? Well, what do? You go down. I mean, I can answer his question, but let's see what he deals with. And when he visits, what shall I answer him? Well, let's see what Job says. We know the answer to that. You do what? You humble yourself. You submit to God. All right, but look at what Job says, 15. Did not he that made me in the womb make him? So he's saying, God, the person that you may want to challenge that I did right or wrong against, you made that person, but you also made me. All right, so if you're going to judge me, judge him. That's another thing that people do. You ever see somebody you do wrong, and they say, well, you spelled that word wrong. Yeah, well, you spelled this one wrong. You lied about that, but you lied about this. So people, instead of admitting what they've done wrong, they try to, well, you did something too. The same wrong I did, you did. Rather than saying, help correct what I'm doing wrong. All right? And we can point the finger real easily.
The only person you could change is yourself.
The only one you can change yourself. That's so true. All right, so he fashioned the votes. Okay, 16. He's back to the if I's. If I had withhold the poor from their desire, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or have eaten my morsel myself alone, and the fatherless have not eaten thereof. For, this is 18, for from my youth, he's bragging now, he was brought up with me as with a father, and I have guided her from my mother's womb. All right, so from verse 16 to 18, he's talking about did I not help the poor, the fatherless, the widow? Once again, patting himself on the back. If I hadn't done all this, the one good thing that he did was he didn't pronounce no curse on himself, saying, if I hadn't done this, may this happen to me. And the sad thing about Job trying to pronounce a curse on himself is he's already going through suffering. But that comes from the lack of understanding that God will, from time to time, allow you to go through things that you won't understand here. See, we think that we're going to understand everything, and we're not. The scripture says that we walk, that we see through a glass what? Darkly. We know in part and we testify in part. But there will come a time when that which is done in part will be done away with, and we will be able to see him as he is. But we got to be patient and wait for that time. So what do we do in the meantime? So what do I do for my confusion? What do I do for my frustration? What do I do? You got to lean on God. Faith. How many times have I said, and I don't think I can ever say it enough. The scripture says, without faith, it is what? Impossible to please God. And I like to underline it so that you understand it. It didn't say without faith it's difficult, or without faith it's a struggle. Without faith it is impossible to please him. Because you're going to have to lean on God when God does stuff that you can't comprehend and you can't understand and you don't know why. And you want to get mad because this doesn't make sense to me. This don't seem right to me. And your math and the math that you have in your mind on how things are supposed to work out, it ain't working out the way you think it's supposed to work out. That doesn't mean God's confused. God's not scratching his head wondering, I wonder how I'm going to get out of this mess. God is never bewildered. We are. So when we're bewildered, when we're frustrated, lean on God. Just lean on him. That's all you can do. God, I'm trusting you. I'm going to lean on you. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I have no clue why this is happening. I'm frustrated. And you can admit to God. But I'm still not going to deny you. And we talked about that one thing Job said. That should be the coin of his book. Though he slay me, yet will I what? Trust him. And that's what you would think and hope that Job would hang on. Mm-hmm. But he's got all this other stuff. But you know what? Hey, sometimes, man, when you get squeezed, and see, the thing is, when God says that he removed the hedge, all of this is because the devil is squeezing him. God's letting Satan just squeeze. You ever get to the very end of toothpaste and you just trying to work that thing and squeezing all that out? That's what the devil is doing to Job. He's trying to squeeze every kind of bit of everything out of Job. And Job is trying to hang on. But the beautiful thing about it was that he's going to make it. He's going to make it. All right, let's move along. Let's keep going here. He's got some more if-I's. Verse 19, if I had seen any perish and for want of clothing, or if any poor without covering. All right? He's going down his what? I haven't done any of this stuff. So, I haven't been guilty of these things. 21, if I have lifted up my hand against the fatherless, when I saw my help in the gates. And if I was able to help and I didn't help, no, I did help. What is Job trying to do? He's trying to present to God his righteous card. He keeps trying to show God his righteousness. And the scripture says that every time he's showing his righteousness to God, what is he showing God? Filthy rags. Because the scripture says our best righteousness is but what? Filthy rags. So from Job's perspective, he's showing shiny, good, positive works. And all God is seeing is filthy, dirty rags. But that's Job's point of view. And that's sometimes how we got to start looking at it. It may be shiny to me, and I may even get the applause and the accolade of my friends and my neighbors. They may look, oh, boy, you did some wonderful things. God sees it as filthy rags. What is the only thing that's going to make God see us as righteous? It's when we're covered with the blood of Jesus. By the righteousness of who? Jesus Christ. That's when God looks at us and calls us his son. And we become one with him. All right, 22. He goes, if I've done any of this stuff, now he's about to curse himself again. He says, then let my arm fall from my shoulder blade. So now he's about to say, you already got, Job, you already got, the blisters and the scales and the sores on your body. Now you want your arm to fall off too? See, when you get frustrated and you get mad, you say things that, but keep it in mind, just keep in your image. The devil is just squeezing him. He's squeezing him. And you wonder, how would you handle if God tells the devil, you can squeeze him as hard as you want, just don't kill him? I don't ever want to be in that position, ever. But if God chose to put me there, I'd have to accept it by what? By faith. And I just lean on God. But Job is being squeezed, and he's saying, if that was to happen, if I've done any of this bad stuff, let my shoulders fall off, and he goes, and let my arm be broken from the bone. He goes, and so he's trying to showcase that I'd be willing to have all of this stuff done to me if you can show that I haven't helped the poor and the widow and the fatherless and the hungry. Well, Job, we know you did that stuff, but you're forgetting one piece, brother. You're born in sin. You're shaped in iniquity. That's what Jesus is coming to deal with. Right? He's not coming to deal with you being a good neighbor. He's not trying to handle whether you're a good co-worker or a good, employer. That's not what Jesus is coming to do. He's not coming to give you the employee of the year celebration. That's not what Jesus is coming to give. He's coming to give you eternal life because of a righteousness. And oftentimes we get that confused by trying to be, Times man of the year, or woman of the year. That ain't the issue. The issue is eternal sin. That's what God's dealing with. And we get those things crisscrossed. And the devil tries to confuse us like that, so that we can think that it's about these deeds and things that we've done, and we can feel impressive, and then we get confused and try to present that to God. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. All right? So he keeps going. He goes, from destruction, he goes, for destruction from God was a terror to me, all right? And by reason of his highness, I could not endure. So he, once again, every now and then, he blurts something out about truth about who God is, all right? And there is greatness in God that sometimes we can't understand, because God not only can build, but he also can destroy. God can lift up, but he also can take down. God can make high, but he also can make low. That's true to keep in mind. But he goes right back in 24 to the if I's. If I had made gold my hope. In other words, he's saying, if I love money more than I love people, all right? Or if I said to find gold, thou art my confidence. So he said, did I put my trust in gold? And Job was saying that to say, that's not what I did. Fine, Job. Good. What you want, a cookie? Come on. That don't matter. We ain't talking about that right now. We're talking about your eternal soul. But Job's not getting that. And Satan is squeezing. He's squeezing him hard. But he goes on. He goes, 25. If I rejoice because of my wealth, because my wealth was great, or because my hand had gotten much. You know, same stuff. I was wealthy, and Job was. Remember, before Satan's attack, Job was the richest man in the East. Job had money. He had wealth. All right? And so he's saying, I didn't let that get to my head. That's fine, Job. You know, but they're saying about the Citizen of the Year award. 26. If I beheld the sun when it was shining, or the moon walking in its brightness, and in my heart have been secretly enticed, or my mouth hath kissed my hand, this also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge. For I should have denied God that is above. So what he's saying is, if I look at the sun and the moon and begin to wonder how wonderful it is, and begin to look at the wonders that they have and begin to what? Worship it. So what Job was saying, I didn't even have any false gods. I didn't worship any false gods. I didn't worship money. I didn't worship wealth. I didn't worship the beauty of the world, the beauty of the universe, the power of the sun, and how the sun gives heat and life and strength to everything on this earth. And I see its majesty and what it can do, but I recognize that's not as good as God. I didn't worship that. Once again, that's fine. But we're still dealing with what? Your sin, because you are what? Born in it. How do you handle that, Job? It can't be handled by an action or a deed. And that's the part, once again, that this book is bringing out. And it's going to continue to bring it out. You know, all of our actions and our deeds, and Job's actions and his deeds are steeped in his suffering. All right? And I said, remember when we get to the book of Solomon, we're going to watch Solomon's acts and all of his deeds steeped in all of his glory, things he was able to achieve. And both of these guys end up in the same place, frustrated. Whether you got it all or can't get nothing to go right, if you're not leaning on God, you're going to end up in the same place, frustrated. All right. I got 5 minutes. I'm going to try to finish this up. We're going to look at some more of these if-I's. All right. And like I stated, you know, it ain't an apology if you start off by saying, if I had hurt your feelings. That ain't how you started off. But he's going on. 29. If I rejoiced at the destruction of him that hated me. So he's saying, I didn't laugh when my enemy got in trouble, or lifted up myself when evil found him. Neither have I suffered my mouth to sin by wishing a curse upon his soul. So my enemy I treated well. I didn't want to see my enemy go into a downfall or laugh when they have hard times. All right? Now, you know, sometimes you look at this and we can get to the point, you ever be driving sometime and you see somebody act all crazy on the highway and you be like, I hope he get pulled over by the police. You ever had that? Because what we do, we now wishing something on somebody who we don't like the way he was driving. And Job was saying, I didn't do any of that stuff. All right? He's pulling out his righteous cards, man, but they're covered in filthy rags. All right. 31. If the men of my tabernacle said not, that we had of his flesh, we could not be satisfied. The stranger did not lodge in the street, but I opened my door to the traveler. So he's saying the people in the neighborhood, and not just the neighborhood, the people in the tabernacle, the people that know me, the people that worship with me, they knew I was a good guy. They knew I opened my doors to the strangers. I didn't just open my door to the strangers people knew they could come to me. He's patting himself on the back. But what are we not dealing with? We're not dealing with how good you are, Job. We're dealing with whether you are a sinner. All right, let's keep going. If I covered my transgressions as Adam, by hiding my iniquity in my bosom. I talked about that in the beginning. Remember we talked about how when we do wrong and we get caught, but so did somebody else. And we want to point to somebody else. Now Job is saying, I didn't do what Adam did. Wow. Now, I could spend a long time here. We just don't have the time. All right? Because it's because of Adam and what he did that Job is dealing with what he's dealing with. So the thing he's trying to blame is really the root cause. And that's the reason why he can't get around it. You can't get around that Adam brought us all into this. And the scripture says, by one man's sin came into the world. But by one man's righteousness, sin has been removed. Adam brought us in, but the second Adam is bringing us out.
All right, amen, amen.
So he's trying to bring up Adam, but he's like, no, you're going down. You went to the wrong guy. All right, that's not the guy you want to bring out, because we could talk about that, and I'm sure we're gonna have some time later on in other portions to deal with that whole aspect when people try to say that they compare that stuff to Adam. The thing is, Adam had a choice, but you got the same choice. Adam had to choose to take the fruit or not. You got to choose to take Jesus or not. The choice, some of us, well, I wish I had the same choice Adam had. I've never been in sin. You got the choice. Mm-hmm. Adam had to choose to take the fruit or not. You got to choose to take Jesus or not. It's the same choice to everybody. And sometimes we want to blame Adam, like Job is doing here. All right. Did I fear the great multitude, or did the contempt of families terrify me? In other words, I wasn't worried about the multitude, the mob, or the terrorists. When people came to me in bunches, I stood my ground. Job said, I have a strong backbone. I wasn't moved by popular opinion. I did what I felt was right. You know? So Job was lifting himself up. He did good. He said, he didn't keep silent when people were doing wrong. 35. Oh, that one would hear me. Behold, my desire is that the Almighty would answer me, and that my adversary had written a book. Wow. Once again. All right. He wants the Almighty to hear him. Well, he is hearing him. And he says he wishes his adversary had written a book. The enemy is part of the reason why the book is written. You go back to chapter 1, chapter 2. God told Satan, why are you here? He goes, I'm here. I'm going forth, looking this to and fro, who I may what? Devour. God said, have you considered my servant Job? So it's because the enemy was looking to devour somebody that the book is written. Job, your enemy, did write the book. But it wasn't written by the enemy. It was written in spite of the enemy. Right? And your enemy tried to kill you, but this book is making you a light and a measure of being able to lift up the frustrations that we all can experience. And we can find a witness to some of the difficulties that we go through in life in this book of Job, if we take the time and analyze what Job's suffering is doing to his psyche, to his mind, to his feelings, and try to apply it to sometimes what we may be experiencing. All right, finishing up here. Surely I would take it upon my shoulder and bind it as a crown unto me. 37, I would declare unto him the number of my steps. In other words, I would tell God all the things that I went through. As a prince would I go near unto him. And you will, Job. That was a prophetic statement. You will go to him as a prince and as a priest. All right? But he don't know that. If his second to last if my land cry against me, or if my flower likewise therefore complain. 39. If I have eaten the fruit thereof without money, or have caused the owner thereof to lose their life. In other words, I didn't steal nobody's work. I paid for what I used. When I needed something, I paid a fair wage for it. I didn't go out and take the man's fruit and didn't pay him for it. I did that properly. All right, but then he ends it with a curse on himself. He goes, if I've done that, look at 40. Let thistles grow instead of wheat, and cockle instead of barley. The words of Job are ended. So Job ends it by saying, if I've done any of this stuff, rather than me having fruit, rather than me having proper things growing, proper grain, let the kind of stuff that's weeds that people can't use happen. And sometimes people's life are full of that. They have a life that's living, but nobody can use it. It don't benefit anybody. And that's not the kind of life you want to live. And that's not the kind of life that Job has. Though he put that curse on himself, if I've done any of this stuff, let my life be like thistles and weeds and stuff that people can't utilize. No, Job, you are a blessing. And that's the thing that he don't see right now. And sometimes it's hard for you to see how you can be a blessing when you are suffering, when you are sick and going through, and your body feels broken, when your family is struggling, and you got social issues, and you got financial issues, and you got and sometimes you don't know. You think, how can I be a blessing to anybody? And you have no idea that God is utilizing and allowing the person that needs to see you. The person that needs to experience how another person handles difficulty, get a peek at what you're doing and how you're handling it. And then can rejoice. If they can do it, I guess I can do it. If they can go another day, not because you did it perfectly, but because you just went on. See, it's him that endureth to the end. See, you got to make sure that I don't know how I'm gonna make it, but I'm gonna see tomorrow. I don't know how. But what are you doing? I'm just trusting God. I'm leaning on Him. A lot more I can say. I ain't finished. I'm just stopping. I got to cut off because we're past the time. But I certainly thank God for Job. When we get into our next chapter, we're going to be introduced to another fella. Somebody that hasn't said anything this whole time. And we're going to see what he's got to say. But we're going to do a little history on who he is or who we think he is. All right? Any other comments or questions before we end? Anybody got anything else they want to add or say to this, about this?